The research vessel Meridian Hope shook violently as it entered the atmosphere of Kyrax's prime. Captain Woodgen of the aquatic Oceani species gripped his command chair with webbed fingers, his gills fluttering with worry. The ice planet below them looked beautiful from space, but now it seemed like a frozen grave waiting to swallow their ship. "Hull temperature dropping fast," called out Nara, the insectoid Threx engineer. Her compound eyes reflected the red warning. Lights flashing across the bridge. "Heat shields are failing faster than expected." Do-Yun Park sat calmly in his seat, the only human aboard the mixed-species vessel. While the alien crew members showed clear signs of stress, he watched the swirling white storms below with quiet interest. His dark eyes studied the ice formations and wind patterns visible through the viewport. "Emergency landing protocol initiated," announced Sora, the tall crystalline Villani researcher. Her translucent body shimmered with nervous energy. "All crew, prepare for impact." The ship's advanced stabilizers struggled against the planet's fierce winds. Kyrax's prime was known for its extreme weather, but their mission was too important to postpone. They were here to study the unique ice formations that could hold secrets about early planetary formation. The scientific value was enormous, but now survival seemed more pressing than research. Jiho, the gaseous Zephyrian navigator, swirled anxiously around his control station. His cloudy form shifted from blue to gray as he tried to find a safe landing zone. "Temperature reading minus 40 degrees Celsius and dropping," he reported. "This is far below safe levels for most of our species." Do-Yun nodded but remained calm. He had studied the mission briefings thoroughly and knew what to expect. Unlike his companions, who came from worlds with controlled climates and advanced heating systems, he had grown up on Earth where temperatures could vary wildly. His home planet had prepared him for conditions that would challenge even the most advanced alien technology. The ship hit the surface hard, sliding across the ice for several hundred meters before coming to rest against a large frozen ridge. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power system struggled to maintain basic functions. The hull had cracked in 3 places, and cold air began seeping into the cabin immediately. "Damage report," Captain Woodgen ordered. Though his voice showed he already feared the worst, Nara's antenna twitched as she checked her instruments. "Primary heating system is down. Life support is running on backup power only. Hull breaches in sections 4, 7, and 9. We have maybe 6 hours of emergency heat before the backup systems fail completely." Sora's crystalline form began showing stress fractures as the temperature dropped. "My species cannot survive below minus 20 degrees for extended periods. The cold will literally shatter my molecular structure." Jiho's gaseous body started condensing at the edges, a dangerous sign for his people. "I need warmer air to maintain cohesion. If I solidify, I will die." Captain Woodgen pulled his scaled body deeper into his thermal suit. "We need to send a distress signal and wait for rescue. The nearest ship is at least 3 days away." 3 days," Nara repeated, her voice hollow. "Our heating will not last 3 hours." While the alien crew discussed their technological options, Do-Yun quietly observed their surroundings through the cracked viewport. He could see a frozen lake about 200 meters from their crash site. Ice-covered rocks jutted up from the snow, and he noticed several areas where the wind had carved interesting patterns in the frozen surface. "We should try to repair the heating system," Sora suggested. "If we can redirect power from non-essential systems, we might extend our survival time." "The damage is too extensive," Nara replied. "Even if we could fix it, we do not have enough power cells to run heating for 3 days." Do-Yun stood up and moved toward the emergency supplies locker. His companions watched as he began gathering items that seemed random to them: metal tools, emergency blankets, rope, and a small medical kit. "What are you doing?" Captain Woodgen asked. "Preparing for survival," Do-Yun answered simply. He pulled on his heaviest jacket and checked his boots. "We cannot rely only on the ship's systems." "But you will freeze to death out there?" Sora protested. "The temperature is deadly for organic life forms." Do-Yun smiled slightly. "Humans are more adaptable than you might think. We evolved on a planet with many different climates. My ancestors survived ice ages and desert heat using only basic tools and knowledge. The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Their species had developed advanced technology specifically because their homeworlds had harsh or unpredictable environments. The idea of surviving with primitive methods seemed impossible to them. "I am going to scout the area," Do-Yun announced. "There might be resources we can use." "Resources?" Jiho's form swirled with disbelief. "This is a frozen wasteland. There's nothing here but ice and rock." "Maybe," Do-Yun said as he sealed his jacket. "But ice is frozen water, and where there is water there might be life, and where there is life there might be food." He moved toward the damaged airlock. The cold air hit him immediately, making his breath visible in white puffs. The aliens watched through the viewport as he stepped onto the frozen surface of Kyrax's prime. The wind was strong but not unbearable. Do-Yun had experienced worse winters during his childhood in the mountains of Korea. He began walking toward the frozen lake, his boots crunching on the snow-covered ground behind him. In the warming ship, 4 alien beings huddled together and tried to make their failing technology last just a little longer. None of them understood that their human companion was about to show them survival skills that their advanced civilizations had never needed to learn. The real test was just beginning. Inside the damaged ship, the alien crew worked desperately to save their failing heating systems. Captain Woojin's webbed hands moved quickly over the control panels, trying to redirect power from every non-essential system. His gills opened and closed rapidly in the cold air, a sign of growing panic among his species. "I have shut down navigation, communications, and food preparation systems," he announced. "This should give us 2 more hours of heat, maybe 3 if we are lucky." Sora's crystalline body had developed several new stress fractures since the crash. The beautiful patterns that normally flowed through her transparent form now looked jagged and dangerous. She worked frantically with a quantum heat generator, trying to repair circuits that had been damaged in the impact. "The primary heating coil is completely destroyed," she said, her voice shaking with cold and fear. "I might be able to create a smaller heating field using the backup generators, but it will only warm a very small area." Nara's compound eyes had begun to fog over as her body temperature dropped. Her 6 arms moved in coordinated patterns as she tried to rebuild damaged heating elements using spare parts from other systems. The insectoid engineer had always prided herself on finding technological solutions to any problem, but the cold was making her movements slow and clumsy. "I am trying to combine 3 broken heating units into one working system," she explained through chattering mandibles. "If I can create a hybrid power coupling, we might have enough warmth to survive until rescue arrives." Jiho's gaseous form had shrunk to half its normal size. The edges of his cloudy body were becoming solid, which meant he was dangerously close to death. He floated near the ship's remaining heat vents, trying to absorb every bit of warmth he could find. "My molecular structure is breaking down," he whispered, his voice now a thin wisp of sound. "I need temperatures above -10 degrees or I will solidify completely. Once that happens, I cannot return to my natural state." The aliens had turned their crash site into a workshop of desperate innovation. Electronic components covered every surface as they cannibalized their ship's systems for parts. Advanced diagnostic tools hummed and beeped as they ran calculations on power distribution and thermal efficiency. "What if we create a thermal feedback loop using the life support processors?" Sora suggested. "We could cycle the remaining heat through a closed system to multiply its effectiveness." "That might work for 30 minutes, Nara replied. "But the power drain would exhaust our batteries completely. We would have intense heat for a short time, then nothing at all." Captain Woojin studied the energy readings on his display. The numbers were not encouraging. "We are consuming power faster than I calculated. At this rate, we have 4 hours of heating left, not 6. While the aliens focused on their complex technological solutions, none of them noticed that their human companion had been gone for over an hour. Through the frosted viewport, they could occasionally see movement near the frozen lake, but they assumed Do-yun had found shelter somewhere and was waiting for the cold to defeat him. "The human will not survive long out there," Sora said during a brief pause in her work. "His species may be adaptable, but no organic life can endure -40 degrees without proper heating technology. He should have stayed inside with us." Jiho agreed, his voice growing weaker. "At least here we have some protection from the wind." Nara looked up from her repair work. "Maybe he found a warm spot among the rocks. Some planets have geothermal vents that create heated areas. Not this planet," Captain Woodgen said firmly. "Our orbital scans showed no volcanic activity or natural heat sources. Kyrax's prime is frozen solid all the way to its core." As the hours passed, their technological solutions continued to fail. The hybrid heating system that Nara had built worked for 20 minutes before overloading and shutting down permanently. Sora's quantum heat generator created a small warm zone but consumed so much power that it drained their batteries at an alarming rate. "I do not understand," Sora said in frustration. "These are advanced systems designed by the greatest minds in the galaxy. They should be able to handle simple environmental challenges." "The problem is not our technology," Captain Woodgen explained. "The problem is that we never planned for complete system failure. Our heating units were designed to work together, not as isolated emergency devices." Jiho's form had become so condensed that he could barely speak. "My people have heated cities for 10,000 years. We controlled the weather on 16 different worlds. But here, with all our knowledge, I am dying from simple cold." Nara tried one more desperate solution. She connected her personal heating unit to the ship's main power grid, hoping to create a warming field large enough for all of them. The device worked for 5 minutes before exploding in a shower of sparks and smoke. "That was our last functioning." "Heater," she said quietly. Outside, the wind howled across the frozen landscape, and snow began falling more heavily. The temperature reading on their instruments dropped to -45 degrees. Inside the ship, their breath now formed thick clouds that turned to ice crystals before falling to the floor. "Captain." Woodgen made a difficult decision. "We need to activate the emergency beacon now. Even if rescue takes 3 days, we must hope they can track our signal and arrive faster than expected." As he reached for the communication controls, movement outside caught his attention. Through the snow and wind, he could see a figure walking toward their ship. It was Do-yun, and he appeared to be carrying something large over his shoulder. "Impossible," Sora whispered. "He has been outside for 3 hours in deadly cold. How is he still alive?" The human reached the airlock and knocked on the damaged door. When Captain Woodgen opened it, cold air rushed in, but so did something else. The smell of cooked fish filled the cabin. Do-yun stepped inside, covered in snow and ice, but very much alive. Over his shoulder he carried several large fish, and in his hands he held primitive tools made from salvaged metal and stone. "I brought dinner," he said simply, as if he had just returned from a trip to the market. Instead of a survival expedition in one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy, the aliens stared at him in complete shock, their failing technology forgotten. For the moment, the aliens stared at Do-yun in complete silence. Ice crystals covered his hair and jacket, but his eyes were bright and alert. He moved with steady confidence as he set down the fish he had caught. Steam rose from the cooked meat, filling the cold cabin with warmth and the smell of food. "How are you still alive?" Sora whispered. Her crystalline body showed new cracks from the cold. Making her voice sound broken and fragile, Do-yun began removing his outer jacket. Underneath, he wore several layers of clothing that he had put together from emergency supplies and salvaged materials. Humans evolved as hunters on a planet with changing seasons. Our bodies learned to adapt to different temperatures over millions of years. He rolled up his sleeves, showing arms that were red from cold but still fully functional. "When I was young, my grandfather taught me to fish in mountain streams during winter. The water was so cold it would hurt, but human hands can work even when they are freezing." Captain Woodgen's gills fluttered with confusion. "But our instruments show the Outside temperature is minus 45 degrees. That should cause immediate tissue death in organic life forms. Maybe for your species, Do-Yan replied as he began preparing the fish. But humans can survive in temperatures that would kill most aliens. We generate heat by moving our muscles and controlling our breathing. Watch. He stood up and began doing simple exercises. Push-ups, jumping motions, and arm swings that made no sense to the watching aliens. Within minutes, his body was generating visible heat. Steam rose from his skin as his internal temperature increased. "This is impossible," Nara said, her compound, eyes wide with amazement. "You are creating thermal energy without any external power source." "Every human can do this," Do-Yan explained while continuing his movements. "We call it exercise. Our hearts pump blood faster, our muscles work harder, and our bodies make heat. It is basic survival knowledge on Earth." Jiho's gaseous form had become dangerously small, but he managed to ask, "How did you catch fish in a frozen lake? The ice must be several feet thick." Do-Yan smiled and pulled out tools he had made from ship debris. A sharp piece of metal attached to a broken pipe handle formed a crude ice pick. Several bent wires had been twisted together to create hooks. I broke through the ice using these tools in my hands. Then I reached into the water and caught fish directly. "You put your hands in freezing water?" Sora's voice cracked with disbelief. "Many times," Do-Yan nodded. "The cold hurt, but human hands can work for short periods in very cold water. I made many trips to catch enough fish for all of us." He showed them his hands. They were red and stiff from cold exposure, but they moved normally. The aliens had expected to see frozen, damaged tissue, but his fingers bent and gripped objects without any problems. "I also built a fire outside to cook the fish," he continued. "I used dry materials from the ship and created sparks with metal and stone. Fire is one of the oldest human technologies." Captain Woojin could barely believe what he was hearing. "You made fire without any heating elements or power sources?" "Fire was the first technology humans ever developed," Do-Yan explained. "Long before we had electricity or advanced tools, we learned to make heat and cook food using only natural materials." While they talked, Do-Yan began constructing something near the damaged wall of the ship. He used metal panels from their broken systems, emergency blankets, and pieces of debris to create a small enclosed space. "What is that?" Nara asked. "A shelter," Do-Yan replied. "The ship's heating is gone, but we can trap body heat in a smaller space. This will keep us warmer than the whole cabin." He arranged the materials to create walls and a roof, leaving small openings for airflow. Then he placed the emergency blankets inside to reflect heat back toward their bodies. "Everyone move into this space," he instructed. "We will share body heat and stay warm together." The aliens hesitated. Their species had never needed to huddle together for warmth. They had always relied on technology to control their environment. "Trust." Do-Yan said gently. "This will work better than your broken heating systems." One by one, they moved into the small shelter. Immediately, the temperature felt warmer. Their combined body heat, trapped in the enclosed space, created a comfortable environment. "This is remarkable," Sora said, her stress fractures beginning to heal in the warmer air. "Such a simple solution, but it works better than our advanced systems." Jiho's gaseous form began expanding back to normal size. "I feel my molecular structure stabilizing." "How did you know this would work?" "Humans have survived in harsh environments for thousands of years," Do-Yan explained. "We learned that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most reliable. Technology can fail, but basic survival knowledge always works." He distributed the cooked fish among his companions. The warm food provided energy and heat that their bodies desperately needed. "During the night I will teach you more survival techniques," he promised. "By tomorrow you will know how to find food, make fire, and stay warm without any technology at all." Nara looked at her broken heating devices scattered around the cabin. "All our advanced knowledge, and we could not solve a simple problem like staying warm." "Your knowledge is not worthless," Do-yeon assured her. But survival requires different skills. Skills that humans never forgot, even after we developed advanced technology. As night fell on Kyraxis Prime, the five beings huddled together in their primitive shelter. For the first time since the crash, the aliens felt truly warm. Outside, the wind howled and the temperature dropped even further. But inside their simple refuge, they were safe. The human had shown them that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions. The next morning brought clearer skies, but even colder temperatures. The ship's instruments showed -50 degrees outside, yet Do-yeon woke up energized and ready to continue their survival education. His alien companions had slept better than expected in their shared shelter, but they still struggled to understand how they could thrive in such conditions. Today I will teach each of you survival skills that work with your natural abilities, Do-yeon announced as he prepared to venture outside again. Every species has strengths that can help them survive. Sora's crystalline form had completely healed overnight in the warmer shelter. What can my people contribute? We are made of living crystal, not biological tissue like yours. That is exactly your advantage, Do-yeon smiled. Crystal can focus and reflect light and heat. You can become a natural tool for concentrating warmth. He led Sora outside to where he had built a small fire the previous day. The flames were still burning from the fuel he had gathered. Stand here between the fire and this ice wall I built. Your body will catch the heat from the fire and reflect it back, creating a warming zone. Sora positioned herself as instructed. Immediately, the area around her became noticeably warmer. Her crystalline structure caught the firelight and bounced it in multiple directions, while also trapping and redirecting heat. Amazing, she breathed. I am functioning like a living mirror and heat concentrator. My species never thought to use our bodies this way. Next, Do-yeon worked with Nara. The insectoid engineer had always relied on complex tools, but her natural shell and multiple arms gave her unique advantages. Your outer shell is perfect insulation, he explained. If you curl up and trap warm air inside, your body will stay heated much longer than mine. And your 6 arms mean you can work on multiple survival tasks at the same time. He showed her how to weave dried plant materials and salvaged fabric into better insulation. While 2 of her arms worked on weaving, the other 4 could gather materials, tend the fire, and prepare food simultaneously. My efficiency has increased dramatically, Nara realized. I was trying to use my arms like human hands, but they work better when I use all of them together for different tasks. Captain Woojin proved to be surprisingly adaptable once Do-yeon explained water survival techniques. As an aquatic species, the captain understood water better than anyone, even when it was frozen. Ice is just solid water, Do-yeon explained as they stood beside the frozen lake. You can read ice formations the same way you read ocean currents. Thick ice means deep water with fish. Thin ice means shallow areas that freeze completely. Woojin studied the ice patterns with new understanding. The darker patches indicate deeper water underneath. The ridged areas show where current flows beneath the ice. I can find the best fishing spots by reading these signs. Exactly, Do-yeon nodded. Your water knowledge makes you the best fisherman among us. You just needed to learn how water behaves when it is frozen. Working with Jiho required the most creativity. The gaseous being was the most vulnerable to cold, but Do-yeon found ways to use his unique properties. You can flow through small spaces that none of us can reach, he pointed out. You can also carry heat from warm areas to cold areas by moving your gaseous form. They discovered that Jiho could slip through cracks in rocks and ice to find protected spaces. He could also absorb heat from their fire and carry it to distant locations, warming areas before the others arrived. I am like a living heating system, Jiho said with excitement. I can distribute warmth wherever it is needed most. As the day progressed, Do-yeon taught them more advanced techniques. He showed them how to build different types of traps for catching small animals. He demonstrated how to identify which plants could provide nutrition, even in frozen conditions. Many plants store energy in their roots during winter, he explained while digging through snow to reach buried vegetation. These roots can be eaten, raw or cooked to provide essential nutrients. He taught them to recognize signs of weather changes by watching wind patterns and ice formations. When ice crystals form in this shape, it means a storm is coming. When the wind shifts to this direction, the temperature will drop further. The aliens began to understand that survival was not just about staying alive, but about reading and adapting to their environment. Their advanced technology had always protected them from needing these skills, but now they saw the value in understanding the natural world. On my homeworld, we controlled weather with machines, Sora admitted. We never learned to predict it by observation. Our cities were completely enclosed, Nara added. We never experienced natural temperature changes or seasonal cycles. Doyon built more sophisticated tools using salvaged materials. He created better fishing equipment, improved their shelter design, and established a system for storing food and fuel. Each improvement used simple principles but produced remarkable results. The key is not to fight the environment, he explained. The key is to work with it. Use what nature provides and adapt your methods to what works best. By evening, each alien had developed their own survival specialties. Sora had become expert at creating warming zones with her crystal structure. Nara could build complex traps and tools using her multiple arms. Captain Wujin could find fish and predict water conditions better than any instrument. Jiho served as their mobile heating system and scout. We are becoming a real survival team, Captain Wujin observed as they gathered around their evening fire. Each of us contributes something different, but we all work together. That is how humans survived on Earth, Doyon explained. We formed groups where everyone had different skills. The hunter, the toolmaker, the firekeeper, the shelter builder. Together we could survive anything. As they prepared for their second night, the aliens realized they were no longer just waiting for rescue. They were learning to thrive in conditions that would have killed them just 2 days earlier. I feel stronger than when we first crashed, Sora said with wonder. Me too, Nara agreed. Using my natural abilities instead of just technology makes me feel more capable. Doyon smiled as he banked their fire for the night. Tomorrow we will learn even more advanced techniques. By the time rescue arrives, you will be true survivors. Outside, the temperature dropped to -55 degrees, but inside there, improved shelter. 5 beings from different worlds slept warm and well-fed, protected by knowledge that was older than any technology. On their third day on Kyraxis Prime, the weather monitoring equipment in their damaged ship began showing readings that terrified the alien crew. A massive storm system was approaching from the north, bringing winds of over 200 kilometers per hour and temperatures that would drop to -70 degrees. This storm will last at least 5 days, Captain Wujin announced, studying the data with growing concern. Our instruments show it covers half the continent. There will be no escape from it. Sora's crystalline form flickered with worry. -70 degrees is beyond the survival limit for any of our species. Even with the skills Doyon has taught us, we cannot endure such extreme cold. The wind speed will destroy any shelter we build, Nara added, her compound eyes reflecting the storm data. Our current shelter cannot withstand 200-kilometer winds. Jiho's gaseous form had grown smaller just thinking about the approaching cold. If the temperature drops that low, I will solidify completely. There will be no way to reverse the process. Doyon studied the storm readings calmly, then looked out at the landscape around their crash site. We need to build a better shelter. Not just better, we need to build one that works with the storm instead of fighting against it. What do you mean? Captain Wujin asked. Look at those ice formations over there, Doyon pointed to a cluster of tall ice pillars about 500 meters away. They have survived countless storms because they work with the wind, not against it. We need to think like ice. He began gathering materials with renewed energy. We are going to dig into the ground and build underground. The storm can rage above us, but below ground we will be protected. The aliens watched in amazement as Doyon began the back-breaking work of digging through frozen ground using only salvaged tools. His breath formed thick clouds in the cold air, but he worked steadily, creating a pit that would serve as the foundation for their storm shelter. "I will help," Sora announced, positioning herself to focus sunlight into a beam that could help melt and soften the frozen earth. Nara used her 6 arms to carry away the dirt and ice that Do-yun excavated. Captain Woojin found ways to identify the best digging spots by reading the ground the same way he read water patterns. Even Jiho contributed by flowing into cracks to help break apart stubborn chunks of frozen soil. "You see," Do-yun said as they worked, "survival is about using every resource and every person's strengths. No one can survive alone in extreme conditions." As the storm clouds grew larger on the horizon, they dug deeper. The underground shelter took shape slowly, with multiple chambers connected by tunnels. Do-yun designed it based on burrow systems he had studied on Earth, where animals survived harsh winters by going underground. "The main chamber will hold all of us and our fire," he explained as they worked. "The side chambers will store food. And supplies? The entrance tunnel curves so wind cannot blow directly inside." When the first storm winds arrived, their underground shelter was complete. They had lined the walls with salvaged insulation and created a ventilation system that would provide fresh air without letting in cold wind. The storm struck with incredible violence. Above ground, winds screamed across the ice at speeds that would have torn apart their ship. Snow and ice particles flew through the air like bullets. The temperature plummeted to -68 degrees, but underground, in their carefully constructed shelter, the 5 survivors sat around a small fire and felt completely safe. "I cannot believe we built this in one day," Sora marveled, watching the flames dance in their protected space. "We built it because we had to," Do-yun replied. "That is the most important survival lesson. When you have no choice, you find abilities you never knew you had." For the next 5 days, the storm raged above them with unimaginable fury. The sound was like continuous thunder, punctuated by crashes as huge chunks of ice were hurled against the landscape by the wind. Do-yun ventured outside twice each day to check their air vents and gather fuel for their fire. Each time, the aliens expected him not to return. The conditions above ground were so severe that their instruments could not even measure them accurately. "How do you survive up there?" Nara asked after one of his trips. "I move fast and stay low," he answered, covered in ice but unharmed. "I follow paths that are protected from the wind, and I never stay outside longer than necessary." He had taught them to recognize the different sounds the storm made, so they could predict when it was safe for him to go outside and when conditions were too dangerous even for a human. "When the wind makes this howling sound, it means the worst. Part of the storm is passing over us," he explained. "When it makes this deeper roaring sound, that is when I can move safely." On the 4th day of the storm, disaster struck. Sora's crystalline structure began developing stress fractures again, despite the warmth of their shelter. The extreme cold above ground was affecting even their protected environment. Do-yun immediately began treating her condition using techniques that seemed impossible to the others. He heated stones in their fire until they were warm but not burning, then placed them carefully around Sora's body to provide gentle, controlled healing heat. "This is called thermal therapy," he explained as he worked. "Gradual temperature control can help damaged tissue repair itself. Too much heat too fast would shatter you completely, but slow, steady warmth will help your crystal structure rebuild." He monitored her condition constantly, adjusting the temperature of the healing stones and moving them to different positions based on how her crystalline form responded. "You are performing medical treatment using heated rocks," Captain Woojin observed with wonder. "Our medical technology could not function in these conditions, but your primitive methods are saving her life." "Sometimes the oldest solutions are the most reliable," Do-yun replied, continuing his careful treatment of Sora's injuries. By the 5th day, when the storm finally began to weaken, Sora had recovered completely. Her crystalline structure was actually stronger than before, having been slowly rebuilt under controlled conditions. "I feel better than I have in years," she announced. The thermal therapy did not just heal my cold damage, it improved my overall structural integrity. When they finally emerged from their underground shelter, the landscape of Kyraxis Prime had been completely transformed. Ice formations that had stood for centuries had been carved into new shapes. Their crashed ship was buried under 10 meters of snow and ice, but they had survived 5 days of the most extreme weather conditions in the galaxy, using nothing but primitive tools and knowledge that humans had developed thousands of years earlier. "We did not just survive?" Jiho said with amazement as his gaseous form expanded freely in the calmer air. "We were comfortable, we were safe, we were completely protected." Do-Yun looked around at his companions, all of them stronger and more confident than they had been a week earlier. "Now you understand what humans learned long ago," he said with satisfaction. "The greatest technology is the ability to adapt and survive no matter what challenges you face." The storm had tested them beyond their limits, but they had passed the test together. 2 days after the great storm ended, the rescue ship Stellar Dawn appeared in the skies above. Kyraxis Prime, Captain Minho of the rescue vessel, expected to find either survivors huddled around failing life support systems, or frozen bodies waiting for recovery. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. 5 life forms moving actively across the surface, with clear signs of organized activity and multiple heat sources indicating controlled fires and structured shelters. "This cannot be correct," announced Rin, the Stellar Dawn science officer. "Our readings show the survivors have been exposed to -70-degree temperatures for over a week. No known life forms can survive such conditions without advanced environmental protection. Maybe their ship's life support systems are more advanced than we thought," suggested Hana, the medical officer. "Some emergency systems can maintain small protective fields." Captain Minho guided his ship toward the crash site, expecting to find a miracle of engineering. Instead, he saw something that challenged everything he understood about survival in extreme environments. The crash site had been transformed into what looked like a primitive but highly effective survival camp. Multiple ice structures served as windbreaks and shelters. Organized piles of gathered materials sat near carefully maintained fires. Fish drying racks and food storage areas showed evidence of successful hunting and resource management. "They have been living here, not just surviving," Rin observed with amazement. "Look at those ice formations. They are not natural. They have been shaped and constructed for specific purposes." As the rescue ship landed, the 5 survivors emerged from their underground shelter. None of them showed signs of cold injury or malnutrition. In fact, they appeared healthier and more energetic than when they had first departed on their research mission. Captain Minho and his rescue team stepped out wearing full environmental suits rated for extreme cold conditions. Their advanced heating systems hummed constantly to maintain safe temperatures inside their protective gear. "How are you all still alive?" Captain Minho asked through his suit's communication system. "Our analysis shows you have endured conditions that should have killed any organic life form within hours." Do-Yun stepped forward, wearing simple, layered clothing and showing no signs of distress from the cold. "We learned to work with the environment instead of fighting against it. Humans have been surviving in harsh conditions for thousands of years using basic techniques." "Basic techniques?" Hannah repeated, her voice filled with disbelief. "You survived the worst storm in this planet's recorded history using basic techniques?" "We survived it together," Sora added, her crystalline form glowing with health and confidence. "Each of us contributed our natural abilities, guided by human survival knowledge." The rescue team members looked around the camp in wonder. They could see evidence of sophisticated planning and execution, but all accomplished using the simplest possible tools and methods. "Show us how you did this," Captain Minho requested. "The Galactic Survival Council needs to document these techniques. Other crews may face similar situations." Over the next several hours, the survivors demonstrated the skills they had learned. Nara showed how to build efficient traps using only salvaged materials. Captain Woojin explained how to read ice formations to find fish and predict weather changes. Sora demonstrated her ability to focus heat and create warming zones. Jiho proved how gaseous beings could serve as mobile heat distribution systems, but it was Do-Yun who impressed the rescue team most. They watched in amazement as he broke through thick ice using primitive tools, then reached directly into freezing water to catch fish with his bare hands. "The water temperature is -2 degrees, Rin announced, checking her instruments. "Direct contact should cause immediate frostbite and tissue death. Human hands can work in cold water for short periods," Do-Yun explained calmly as he pulled another fish from the icy lake. "We evolved as persistence hunters. Our bodies learned to function in conditions that would stop other species." The rescue team tried to understand how such simple methods could be more effective than their advanced technology. Their environmental suits required constant power and sophisticated heating systems. Their food came from processed emergency rations. Their shelter depended on force fields and climate control. "Your methods use no external power," Captain Minho observed. "They require no replacement parts or technical maintenance. They work entirely through knowledge and adaptation." "That is the strength of primitive technology," Do-Yun replied. "It cannot break down because it does not depend on complex systems. It works because it follows natural principles that never change." As they prepared to leave Kyraxis Prime, each survivor reflected on what they had learned. The experience had changed them in ways that went far beyond simple survival skills. "My species has forgotten how to adapt," Sora admitted. "We became so dependent on controlling our environment that we lost the ability to change ourselves when necessary." "I thought engineering meant building complex machines," Nara said. "Now I understand that the best engineering sometimes means using the simplest solution that works." Captain Wujin looked back at the frozen lake where he had learned to fish through ice. "I spent my whole career studying water, but I never truly understood it until I learned to work with it in its solid form." Jiho's gaseous form swirled with satisfaction. "I discovered abilities I never knew I had. My people always focused on what we could not do in different environments. Now I know what we can do." The rescue ship Stellar Dawn departed from Kyraxis Prime carrying more than just 5 survivors. It carried knowledge that would change how the galaxy approached survival and adaptation. 3 months later, Do-Yun stood before a class of young aliens at the Interspecies Survival Academy. Students from 17 different species listened as he explained the fundamental principles of environmental adaptation. "Technology is a powerful tool," he told them, "but it should never replace your ability to adapt and survive. The greatest technology is the knowledge that lives in your mind and the skills that exist in your hands." He held up simple tools made from basic materials. "These tools are 10,000 years old in design, but they work as well today as they did when humans first created them. They will work on any planet, in any conditions, for any species willing to learn." A young Golani student raised her crystalline hand. "But Professor Do-Yun, what if we do not have human abilities? What if our species cannot generate body heat or work with frozen water?" Do-Yun smiled, remembering his alien companions on Kyraxis Prime. "Every species has unique strengths. Your crystalline structure can focus and reflect heat in ways no human ever could. The key is not to copy human methods exactly, but to understand the principles and adapt them to your own abilities." He looked around the classroom at faces from many different worlds. Survival is not about being the strongest or having the best technology. Survival is about being able to change, to learn, and to work together. Those are abilities that every intelligent species can develop. As the class ended, Do-Yun looked out the window at the Academy's gardens, where plants from hundreds of worlds grew together in carefully maintained harmony. It reminded him of that frozen shelter on Kyraxis Prime, where 5 different beings had learned to survive by combining their unique strengths. The greatest lesson of human survival was not that humans were superior to other species. The greatest lesson was that adaptation, cooperation, and simple knowledge could overcome any challenge. No matter how impossible it seemed. In the end, the cold had not defeated them. Instead, it had taught them that the warmest shelter was the one built by many hands working together.